We are recording in progress today with AVID Eghbali, director, producer, Bated Breath. Thank you for being on the show, Avid.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. The film, before we dive into the content of the film and your own personal background and relation, let's see if you would like to introduce yourself in any way or set up Bated Breath. Either is optional.
Yeah, as you mentioned, my name is Avid, director of Bated Breath. Bated Breath is a short film. It revolves around mental health, specifically anxiety. And the main interesting thing about the film is about how family also deals with anxiety. It's a story between a mother and a daughter. And, daughter has anxiety and feels anxious with a mother who lacks the understanding of what that even means. And I think that that's a very common thing that is in many families of where if they were a little bit more, let's say, old school, they would feel that mental health is not as important or anxiety does not exist, depression does not exist, just feel better, just be better. And it's a film that revolves around that. And exactly kind of, I think modern day is a huge conversation. I think I love the transparency that we've created in our culture right now to be able to speak about mental health. So the film talks and touches on that subject. And it's a short film that one day I would love for it to become a feature film. And that's just something that is very important to me as far as a movie goes, is does it have relatability to the audience? Is there something that people connect to? And I don't want to give it away, but at the end of the movie, it's actually where we leave off on the mom's reaction, because I want there to be a feeling of, if a mother who is similar to our character sees this movie, she may have a spark, or it may spark a chord for her to be able to, have that mirror reflection of her own self in that character.
Yeah, thank you, Avid. I appreciate that setup. The word relatability is definitely um, one of the things that popped into my mind reviewing the film. And, I don't know who doesn't have anxiety,
Yeah.
either now as an adult or, will experience anxiety in one way, shape, or form. And, all of us are human. And, in modernity, it seems to be really prevalent with the distractions and the task switching and a lot of countless different things. And I think this film, on that note, really kind of prioritizes, coming myself from a Eastern European Jewish background. I mean, I was supposed to grow up to be a doctor and make a lot of money. So that was the expectation, and that was the social barometer for success. And I'm sure it's not just, I think as an immigrant, I was born in another country. I think a lot of immigrants feel that way, and certainly a lot of Native American born people. So it's certainly a relatable film to me. And, one of the things that I think, getting to like, hey, why is this way? And I think there's a lot of social stigma that is kind of the pinning of this film in terms of thematically. And I guess before we go to like the content of that and sort of the meaning of that, I wanted to ask you, in terms of your own experience, where did you get the inspiration from this film to do this topic? Really this topic, and that kind of like just like, even a pre-thought, oh, I want to do a film and I want to do it about, but this is it, and this is how I'm going to tackle it, and this is what's motivating me.
Yeah, I collaborated with the writer and actress of the movie, Melissa Hayes. She wrote the movie, and we were talking about mental health. We were talking about our own anxiety, and she was mentioning how a cat could be really helpful in coping with any of that. I mean, that's why there's Duke, her cat in the movie as well. And as we were like kind of talking about that, she then mentioned that she has a script and if I would like to read it. And as soon as I read it, I felt my own relatability to it through her own character, as you'd mentioned, immigrant parents and all of that is kind of like how I've also been raised. And my background is I was born in Iran and moved to America when I was a kid, and so I've kind of also had that, you could say, that environment of where I could just stiffen up my upper lip and just kind of chuck her on and be better and just and move on and kind of disregard the idea of, you know, my mental health and what's around me and my environment. And so we were able to connect on that. And the thing that I think that we found it funny is that she was born in America, she's from America, and we kind of have like this very similar you know similar connection on how we were raised and how our families raised us and how, you know, mental health was that kind of idea of topic. And uh after that, we were able to just kind of work together and start crowdfunding the movie and being able to execute it. I don't know if I think I steered off, to be very honest with you, your main question. So
Well,
if you could loop me back in.
okay, all right, I will. No, I think you've set it up, and I think like to drive it home is really. It sounds like, you know, the question was what really inspired you and to make this film that's like kind of like a not a cognitive thought, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like an emotional impulse to do this, and it sounds like, you know, you and the writer both share this common experience, and you have to give voice to saying, hey, you know, this way of thinking is outdated, unhealthy, whatever it might be, and you had to propose a alternative or something along those lines. How did
Yeah.
you say it?
We had to, I think, create an art out of it. I think that's how her and I were like seeing eye to eye is, you know, there's something that we both feel stuck in, and is there a way that we could be able to make something come out of it where, again, if we could have other people connect to it as well, then it makes it, there's like this validation that we will feel internally when other people having that relatability. And there's like this feel goodness that I think that her and I were like seeking when it's like the art that we created, that people having that relatability to as well. And so I think that's how we saw the end goal. With me was my, like, I had like visual ideas of like where I was wanting to do uh uh rack focus every time she inhaled and exhaled, so the lens was breathing. So that was like a stylistic way of like wanting to show the breath and how important the breath is in order to ground ourselves into coming back to reality when our mind is spinning with anxiety. And so there was like ways of us figuring that out. And I think that's definitely, I think, how she found trust in me to direct it, and I found trust in her to be the actress and writing it.
You know, I love that because it is very candid, and you know, the more candid when we are candid, there's a power in that, you know, truth and honesty, and you know that what you said that I definitely connect with is the idea of stuckness, and then how to get unstuck by going through it and really exposing what it is, and then you're like exploring your humanity, which is the art form, right?
Yeah.
Exploring that humanity, understanding what it is, sharing it, and exposing what is true and common to us all. So
Yeah,
appreciate
of
that, man. Thank you.
course. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, of course. You know, and to that, you know, shared humanity and what's common to us all really brings me to the second really major question or line of thought and play it forward is what are the various not so much subject, but what the subject matter, you know, we've discussed, and now what is the takeaway? What are some of the morals that you have taken away exploring this subject and have been able to either see from this film or incorporate into your life through the process of making it?
I didn't really incorporate it into the film, but transcendental meditation's awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say one thing that the film actually really did make me become like, you know, I don't want to say like moral, but it just became a discipline, is breathing.
Yeah.
Uh, that to me, I can't believe that for me, I've gone all my life without thinking of the power of the breath. And it's called bated breath. Bated breath is like roughly around the time of when you're breathing and you're hyperventilating and you're coming to that moment of blackout.
Hmm.
Uh, and so uh for me, like when I was like doing a lot of research on before we started shooting, I was just like realizing like there's box breathing, there's 3-2-1 breathing,
Mhm,
there's so many
mhm.
ways of breath that controls how we feel, and lowers our anxiety from it. And that was something that I wish, I wish my family had taught me that. I wish I knew that as I was growing up. But and I don't blame my family for not knowing that either, because that's something that their family wasn't able to teach them. That's something that the generations of families were not able to teach them. So it's not anything against that either. But it was just like such a realization of being like, wow, I could actually control my breathing to control my mood.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was, I think, something that I really took away from the movie. We didn't necessarily ever show, because again, it was a short film. We didn't fully show like the resolution of it that much. We kind of left it with an open end. Again,
Hmm.
because I think the main goal of the movie was to be able to target the parents or the family members that are in this situation of where they're feeling disconnected with their child who has anxiety. And so, if we were to show like our main character Hannah's like point of view as like a full resolution, it would be her learning how to breathe.
Hmm. 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 Yeah,
That's where the movie would be going.
yeah. To be, I guess, also more explicit in the line I'm trying to pursue, the answer really to get, or at least the question to focus on, is the message of the movie. And the message of the movie, certainly you've discussed how, hey, there's a certain amount of sensitivity around mental health in general and anxiety in particular that we can, as a society, up our game on and, speak to across generations,
Yeah.
because there needs to be awareness around that. And it's a real thing, and it can make us all healthier. So there's that for sure. And then a couple of key lines to kind of spark the conversation and thinking is that resonated with me. This is not what I imagined for my life, and you look ridiculous. So when you take those two lines, those are two really powerful lines, in that scene with the,
Laundry
um,
basket.
yeah, that was like a really, really very strong scene, because it's something that was very exposing and something that, could be very, that was a great, great
Yeah.
scene. And so, what do you feel, as a creator, you don't have to tell the audience what to think, but what do you feel the message of the movie is for you?
I think I've kind of like touched on it. The
Sure.
message for me is we have a lot going on and no one understands us. We need to do what works for us to feel better. The scene that you were referring to, the purpose of that scene was that our main character has a really quirky thing where she puts herself in a laundry basket. She puts that laundry hamper on, she just closes herself off, and that's what prevents her panic attack. We, and looking back, I wish I showed more of that again if I had more of that running time. There was a lot that I had to cut from the movie just because of hitting our time limit. But that scene where she puts her laundry basket on, the mom is interrupting that moment of peace for her. There's a moment of peace for her of doing that. That was the intention of like the whole laundry basket, is that when she does this, it's as if she did her breathing. It's as if she followed all of those patterns
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
steps in order to reduce her anxiety. And it's like we all need to have that space. We're all deserved to have that space. And in the movie, we show that the mother just finds it to be ridiculous. Who the
Yeah,
hell
yeah,
decided to put a laundry basket over their head? How you're ridiculous. How crazy is that idea? And yeah, so the message going back to it is we all have our own version of coping. We all have our own I should say a healthy version. We should all
yeah,
have our
yeah,
own
yeah, yeah.
coping, and it's if it works for us, then great, stick to it.
Yeah,
And one thing that I think I took away again from doing the research and the prep in the movie is, for me, it's transcendental meditation. I just watched these videos with like David Lynch explaining
yeah.
about it, and there's other stuff as far as like breathing that I started to take on, and yeah, that breath work I think is what also grounded me.
I love that, man. I love that because, it's one of the things that is so special about talking to the creators about their movies. Like, what there are multiple layers of messages, and how do you, kind of focus on them in different ways, and what's like the holistic one that incorporates all of them. And what you said is a great one. Is It's a wonderful takeaway about doing what works for you,
Yeah,
in the face of judgment and criticism and
right.
overwhelming,
Yeah.
um that overwhelm that comes from so many different sources. And I think for me, you really hit it about, you know how do you stay true to yourself in the face of the judgments of the people that you love, and reconcile, your life with maybe even, the things that you've been taught should be, how do you reconcile with the shoulds where you are now?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. It makes me think about, the idea of like how many people hold themselves back from doing what actually works because of either their own the judgment that they're having of what other people think of them.
Right.
And I feel I guess I don't know if I know your question like head on right now,
Oh, you
but
got it. We did
oh,
it. Check.
great, 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 great. Yeah, well, just the fact that what works is sometimes ignored because of our own insecurity of what society thinks of us.
Yeah.
And, again, going back to, I think with this film, like the reason of making this film is the more content, the more, just everything from let's just say, like social media content leading up to feature films, if all of that could create a space where it's acceptable, where like the idea of how you cope with mental health is acceptable, and we will be shape-shifting culture's vision. I think the reason why our generations of our parents and their parents and everything lack the understanding of what mental health was because I think movies portrayed different things in that time. I think the movies were looking at a lot of strengths, superheroes either in one case or just people with a lot of power, and uh, lacking vulnerability. I'm sure there was always human connection and human relatability in those films that made people watch it, but I also feel like it created a lot of unrealistic worlds. And I think where we're at now is creating movies that create the space of so much realism where we are able to feel open to talk about a lot of the stuff because movies are talking about it. And I think that that's one of the it's one of the powers of our art form, is that we're literally involved in how culture is shifting itself through the decades of my children and their children, everyone else's children, only because movies are making it acceptable, and society then picks up on that. So
Absolutely.
I find that to be like a huge thing. And yeah, I mean, to make more movies of where people do random things and that's how it makes them feel. As long as, we're not like promoting like drugs, alcohol, and that to be the
Yeah.
use of coping and really healthy ways. I feel like people who would watch it would want to, people who would watch it would feel the relatability and then they would practice it in their own lives. Very similarly as when I watch a movie with like Iron Man, I want to be Iron Man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that kind of feeling.
I think it's a great point. And like you said, healthy coping is, the key word. And it's awesome. It's a awesome thing. And that's like the inspiring thing is, you see the generations evolve in that way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree.
The last question to play it forward is, and you've touched on it, you said it before with the transcendental meditation, but is there any other way that you've been personally changed since making this movie?
Personally, hmm. Well, I mean, mentioning besides the transcendental meditation and breath work, I think the DP, Sarah, her and I have gotten so close, and she's like such a mentor for me because, I used to be a DP, you could say, with DSLR cameras,
Hmm.
and she introduced me into like cinema cameras, and that was one of those things where I felt like I just like learned a lot more technical skills, and I learned a lot more about like lighting and just what I guess took away from the film besides of the mentioning of the breath work and the transcendental meditation, is the crew that I formed and the people that I got to work with, because I've actually worked with them many times after that movie. And before that, I was very much, you could say, very new, didn't have that many connections, didn't have that many people. And so one of the things that came from that movie, I think, was the people who I got to work with that I really enjoyed. And, it's the best thing about set life, is the fact that you're always around people. Your 9 to 5 is exciting. It's not always behind a desk, which is also fine to be behind a desk too. But there's an adventure that I feel like that comes with doing this job, and it's really rewarding in that sense, I think.
That's awesome. AVID Eghbali, director and producer, Bated Breath. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a very pleasure to speak with you. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Likewise. All right, everybody. Till next time on Play It Forward.